here we are enjoying this beautiful sunset. I'm gonna look at a piece of junk. Okay, so we ran the G6 again today. I used the back a lot in the heat, but this was my first run on the W body front suspension setup. So I did have some problems. We will get to that in a bit. Let's go overall. Let's go over the overall car. Back end, I used a little bit, not much. After the heat, I had to cut off the frame rail because it was into the tire, but nothing bent. No trailing arms, no nothing. Pretty impressed with the actual rear suspension, with the fact that the lower arms are aluminum. All I did was just loosely seatbelt the rear springs into the car. I kind of thought I was going to have a lot more problems with the actual rear suspension setup, but I didn't. So props to the back of this car. Something I did do up here is I put a ratchet strap around the pillars because they were starting to give out. As you can see, this one here is kind of all folding in a bit, but the speaker deck hasn't moved. These here are just trying to hold this down so it doesn't slide up, and I do have the seat belts to the floor, so I don't know if that really did anything. In the front, after Aurelia, I did use the front a little bit more this show. I did try to poke a little bit of tires because this was a half decent bumper. The frame really didn't do what I wanted it to do. Again, guys, if this frame could have been shortened with 6 inches of plate, it would have been a completely different animal than what happened to it today. Now, let's talk about the motor. The motor actually ran great, never even got hot in the heat of the feature. I still have my reserve bottle tank full of coolant. I had put a dummy temp sensor to the other car into this thing. It ran great. Interior of the car went good. I had no real electrical problems at all with this car. It starts up, it runs, it drives, everything great. Well, not drives anymore. Front end could have been tougher, but it's because of the stock rules. I didn't really get to use it that much, but I did know it was going down. I could see it from inside the car. Here's the problem that we had. In the heat, this is my first time running the W body front suspension in one of these. In my heat, the axle actually pulled out of the transmission, but it was just in there enough that I could, if I was really gentle and I started moving, it would start going. So I was actually making some half decent shots in my heat, and then when I felt this axle grinding away, I started going a little softer and softer, trying to make it not fall out and me lose, because if I didn't make the feature, I wasn't being able to run again that day. So when I came out, what I did was I loosened this nut as far as it will go while it was still engaged to the splines of the actual axle. And then once it was engaged to those splines, then I held it tight with this piece of metal. This is actually just a little bit of frame I cut off the back, folded in half with some holes drilled into it, which pushed the axle as tight in as I could. The motor still moves around quite a bit because of that broken back motor mount, but it was enough to get me back in the ring, and I ended up getting fourth in the feature. I got a heavy passenger side door shot here, which I don't know if shocked it or if I was backing up. I'm not sure, and it kind of spit out the axle. I'm still kind of upset about this. So now here's my problem. With the front frame folding down like this, it's really not worth putting another axle into this. And it's really not worth saving too much from this car. So what we're probably going to do is I actually offered this car for free to a young kid that wants to do his first demolition derby. When I was in Aaron, he was being great. He bought a shirt off me a couple weeks ago, and great kid, and he said he wanted to get in a derby, and I said, you can have this car because it's not really worth me running. There's one more derby where they do youth, but this is stock build. I'm not sure if their youth class is pro or stock. I said, if you get an axle for it, I'll tell you that I think it's out of alumina with a 3100. You will have to cut it and extend it probably by 1 inch, and then this thing should go all back together. So I don't know if he's going to take it or not. The derby's 2 weeks away, so by when the time this video gets posted, this derby that I offered it to him will already be passed. So I don't know if he's going to take it or not, but the offer's up there. You know what? These newer cars are kind of hit and miss, and I think I would have much more enjoyed this car if I was able to cut it shorter. But back of it, tough as nails. I thought that it was going to go a lot worse than what it did, especially with the aluminum suspension. In the heat, I heard a loud grinding noise. I thought it was the control arm snapped, but it was just body metal into the actual tire. But if you take a look at the inside seams, none of them blew out at all. Speaker deck hasn't moved at all. This thing is actually half decent in the back. And maybe if I drove more with the back, I wouldn't have had such problems with the front bending down like that. But I couldn't really back up in the heat because of the axle issue. So, you know what, guys? These newer cars, they're not all junk. They do have their weak spots, especially these GMs with all the aluminum components. But with the different suspension in the front of it, nothing's really moved yet. I just got to figure out the axles. But this is a weak spot. But I knew that was going to be a weak spot. It wouldn't be so bad if it did that on both sides and just kept coming in straight. But you can clearly see that she's going to go down hard on this side too, just like that side. So what we're probably going to do is, if he doesn't take the car, we're going to cut the bumper off. We're going to keep the bumper, maybe keep some of the front suspension pieces, keep the tires. You guys know what we'll keep, all that fun stuff. But what we're going to do now is take this thing off the trailer and probably throw the Subaru on it, start getting the Subaru ready for scrap, probably take that in Tuesday morning, just to start getting some cars off the property. But the Subaru Impreza, that is, the Forester is already long gone. But realistically, guys, the car still runs and starts just fine. It just doesn't drive. And the sheet metal is a little bit thinner. But new cars, what are you guys going to do? You got to derby something in the future. But we'll have to see. But let's see if I can interest you guys in something different that you guys might not see. So I have this hybrid engine car over here, which means it has a battery that runs the car while the car is not running. So I can back up and actually drive this car forward without the car actually running, because it's an electric motor built into the transmission. So what I'm thinking is basically take the head off the motor, take so there's no compression, no resistance at all in the engine, and see how far I can get this thing on the electric. And if it's far, charge it up, take it into a derby as electric without any fueling at all. Do you guys think that would be fun? I don't know what the promoter would say to me. So far it's blown one fuse, and I jumped it with a screwdriver, and that seems to be fine. But she does run and drive around on the electric. I just probably have to move like all of this, because I'm pretty sure that's like high voltage stuff. But imagine that. No fuel cell, just a battery cell. So we'll have to see. Like I said, the future, guys, is a whole bunch of different opportunities. You just got to find out what you can build. Camrys, Luminas, stuff like that are not going to last forever. We got to find the next cars, guys. I know Nissan Altimas are not the toughest car out there, but there's plenty of different hybrids. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you here back later on Zach's Workshop.